Andre Wilson sat in his home office, fingers drumming against the polished mahogany desk as he stared at the cream-colored envelope. The wedding invitation had arrived 3 days ago, and he still hadn't decided whether to attend. The name on the invitation, Blake Thompson, brought back memories of college days that felt like another lifetime. Andre picked up the invitation again, running his thumb over the embossed golden letters. 20 years ago, they had been freshman roommates at Westridge University. Blake came from money and made sure everyone knew it, while Andre had scraped by on scholarships and part-time jobs. They weren't exactly friends, but they'd shared a dorm room for a year before Blake moved to a private apartment off campus. Still can't decide. Andre looked up to see his assistant, Tanya, standing in the doorway with a stack of documents. At 45, Andre had built an empire that spanned real estate, tech investments, and renewable energy. Wilson Enterprises employed over 10,000 people, and his personal net worth had crossed the $8 billion mark last quarter, though most people in the city wouldn't recognize him if they passed him on the street. Andre preferred it that way. "It's just a wedding," Tanya said, placing the documents on his desk. "People attend those all the time without having existential crises," Andre laughed. "When's the last time I attended a social event that wasn't for business or charity?" "Fair point," Tanya conceded. "But maybe that's exactly why you should go. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Who says I want to go to Blake Thompson's wedding?" Andre swiveled in his chair to look out at the city skyline. From his penthouse office, he could see the river winding through downtown, the gleaming towers of the financial district, 3 of which he owned, and the sprawling park he'd helped renovate with a $50 million donation 2 years ago. "Then toss the invitation," Tanya said with a shrug. Problem solved. Andre turned the invitation over in his hands again. "Blake and I weren't close. I'm surprised he even remembered me. Maybe he's inviting all his old college contacts. Networking never stops for some people." Tanya paused. "Or maybe he's one of those people who invite successful acquaintances to show off how well-connected he is." "That would be ironic," Andre said with a wry smile, "considering he has no idea who I've become." After college, Andre had changed his last name from Washington to Wilson, his grandmother's maiden name, partly to honor her memory, and partly because he'd grown tired of the subtle discrimination he faced when sending out resumes with his original name. By the time he made his first million, Andre Wilson was his legal name, and he'd kept a deliberately low profile as his wealth grew. Blake, meanwhile, had followed the expected path into his family's investment firm. Andre occasionally saw the Thompson name in business news, a mid-sized regional firm with solid but unspectacular performance. Nothing like the global reach of Wilson Enterprises. "You know what? I think I will go," Andre decided suddenly. "It might be interesting to see old faces. And it's at the Grand Summit Hotel. I should check on our investment there anyway." Tanya raised an eyebrow. "The Grand Summit? That's one of yours, isn't it?" "We own 60%, Andre confirmed. Blake probably has no idea. The Thompson name isn't on the ownership papers." "This could be entertaining," Tanya said with a mischievous grin. "Are you bringing Diane?" Andre considered this. His girlfriend of 3 years was currently in Tokyo closing a major tech acquisition. "No, she won't be back until next week. I'll go solo. Want me to RSVP?" "Please." Andre handed her the invitation. "Just don't mention anything about my current situation. I'd rather not make a big deal of it." After Tanya left, Andre pulled up the Thompson Investment Group website on his tablet. The company had grown modestly since Blake's father handed over the reins 5 years ago. Andre scrolled through their executive team photos. All men, all white, mostly over 50. It wasn't surprising, but it was disappointing. Andre's own executive leadership team was deliberately diverse with people from various backgrounds, ages, and experiences. He firmly believed this diversity drove innovation and was a key reason for his company's explosive growth. Andre's phone buzzed with a calendar notification. He had a virtual meeting with his education foundation board in 5 minutes. The foundation provided scholarships to promising students from underprivileged backgrounds, kids like he had once been, and had sent over 300 young people to college in the past decade. As he prepared for the meeting, Andre found himself thinking about the wedding again. It had been years since he'd interacted with people who didn't know who he was or what he had accomplished. Most people he met now either wanted something from him or treated him with the cautious deference reserved for the extremely wealthy. Going to this wedding as just another guest from the grooms, as it might actually be refreshing. 2 weeks later, Andre stood in his walk-in closet considering what to wear. The invitation had specified black tie, so he selected a perfectly tailored tuxedo, custom-made but deliberately lacking any designer labels or flashy details. His only concession to luxury was his watch, a vintage timepiece that had been his first significant purchase after making his first million. Unless you were a watch enthusiast, you'd never guess its value. His phone rang. It was Ray, his head of security. "Everything's set, sir," Ray said. "I've coordinated with hotel security. They know you're attending, but will treat you like any other guest. I'll be there as well, but keeping a low profile." "Thanks, Ray. Remember, I'm just an old college acquaintance of the groom. No special treatment." "Understood, sir. The car will be ready at 6. Andre had considered driving himself in one of his less ostentatious cars, but ultimately decided against it. His driver would drop him off and pick him up like any other car service. As he finished getting ready, Andre found himself genuinely curious about how the evening would unfold. He rarely thought about his college days anymore. They seemed to belong to another person's life. Before the scholarships led to his computer science degree, before his first startup sold for $8 million, before he reinvested that money and multiplied it 100-fold within a decade. At precisely 6 o'clock, Andre stepped into the elevator that would take him down to the private garage beneath his building. The mirrored walls reflected a tall, fit man in his mid-40s, with close-cropped salt and pepper hair and a neatly trimmed beard. His dark brown skin contrasted handsomely with the crisp white of his shirt and the black of his tuxedo. Andre took a deep breath. For one night, he wouldn't be Andre Wilson, the billionaire, the CEO, the philanthropist. He would just be Andre, Blake's former roommate from freshman year. The drive to the Grand Summit Hotel took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Andre used the time to review some quarterly reports on his tablet, making occasional notes. When the car pulled up to the hotel entrance, he slipped the tablet into his briefcase. "I'll call when I'm ready to leave," he told his driver. The Grand Summit was one of the city's premier luxury hotels, a gleaming tower of glass and steel with a sweeping entrance. Doormen in maroon uniforms greeted arriving guests. Andre walked through the massive revolving doors into the lobby, with its soaring ceilings and marble floors. The hotel had been one of his early real estate investments, and he felt a small surge of pride at how well it had been maintained. A sign directed wedding guests to the grand ballroom on the mezzanine level. Andre followed other tuxedo-clad men and elegantly dressed women up the curved staircase. At the entrance to the ballroom, a young woman with a tablet checked names against the guest list. "Andre Wilson," he said when he reached her. She scrolled through her tablet. "Yes, Mr. Wilson, you're at table 15. She handed him a small card with his table number. "The ceremony will begin in 30 minutes. Please help yourself to champagne while you wait." Andre nodded his thanks and entered the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the room. Round tables draped in white linen surrounded a dance floor, and a string quartet played softly in one corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered spectacular views of the city lights. Andre accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and surveyed the room. He recognized a few faces from his college days, though no one he had been particularly close to. As he sipped his champagne, he wondered if this had been a mistake. What was he hoping to get from this evening? Before he could reconsider his decision, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Well, I'll be damned. Andre Washington, is that really you?" Andre turned to see Blake Thompson approaching, arms outstretched for a handshake. He looked older, of course, heavier around the middle with thinning hair, but his confident stride and broad smile were just as Andre remembered. The moment of truth had arrived. Andre extended his hand with a genuine smile. "It's Wilson now, actually. Good to see you, Blake. Congratulations on your big day." Blake's handshake was firm, his smile wide, but his eyes quickly moved past Andre to scan the room over his shoulder. The momentary connection felt hollow. Wilson. What's with the name change? Trying to hide from someone?" Blake chuckled at his own joke. "Anyway, glad you could make it. How long has it been? 20 years? "Just about," Andre replied. "Life moves quickly." "That it does. So what are you up to these days? Still messing around with computers?" Blake's tone was friendly but distracted, his attention clearly divided. Andre smiled. Something like that. I work in tech investments now. Good for you, Blake said, clapping him on the shoulder. Tech's been hot. Though nothing beats old-fashioned finance, am I right? Thompson Investment Group is bigger than ever. Dad finally let me take the wheel and we're up 18% this year. Before Andre could respond, a woman in a shimmering gold dress approached and slipped her arm through Blake's. Her blonde hair was pulled into an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her ears and throat. Blake, your mother is looking for you. The photographer wants family photos before the ceremony. Right. Blake turned to Andre. This is my bride-to-be, Veronica. Honey, this is Andre. We roomed together freshman year at Westridge. Veronica offered a practiced smile. How lovely. Thank you for coming. Congratulations, Andre said warmly. The venue is beautiful. It is, isn't it? The Grand Summit is simply the best in the city. We had to book it 18 months in advance. She tugged at Blake's arm. Darling, we really should go. Catch up with you later, Andre. Enjoy the open bar. Blake called over his shoulder as Veronica led him away. Andre watched them disappear into the crowd. Noting how Blake stopped to greet other guests with far more enthusiasm than he'd shown Andre, he took another sip of champagne and made his way toward table 15. The ballroom had filled quickly. At least 200 guests milled about, the noise level rising as more champagne was consumed. Andre found his table and introduced himself to an older couple already seated there. I'm Andre Wilson. I went to college with Blake. The woman brightened. Oh, how nice. I'm Patricia, Blake's aunt, and this is my husband, George. Are you in finance too? No, I'm in technology and investments. How interesting, Patricia said, though her tone suggested the opposite. Blake has done so well with the family business. His father is so proud. Andre nodded politely. I'm sure he is. More guests joined their table, a cousin of Blake's, a couple who were neighbors of the Thompson family, and a business associate of Blake's father. Andre mostly listened as they chatted about country clubs, vacation homes, and mutual acquaintances. So who do you know here? The business associate, Bob or Bill? Andre couldn't remember, eventually asked him. I was Blake's roommate in college, Andre explained again. Ah, Bob or Bill nodded, his interest visibly waning. Not many of Blake's college friends here. Mostly family and business connections. Andre wasn't surprised. He'd already noticed that he was one of only a handful of black guests in the room. A server approached to refill water glasses, a young Latino man who avoided eye contact as he moved around the table. This new staff isn't as good as they used to be, Patricia whispered loudly after he left. Ever since they changed management, the quality has gone downhill. Andre bit back a response. He knew exactly when management had changed, when his company had acquired majority ownership and instituted better pay and benefits for hotel workers. A bell chimed, signaling guests to take their seats for the ceremony. The string quartet transitioned to traditional wedding music as the wedding party assembled at the front of the room. Andre watched with mild interest as groomsmen and bridesmaids processed down the aisle that had been created between the tables. Blake stood at the front, beaming as Veronica appeared on her father's arm. The ceremony was brief and traditional. Andre found his mind wandering to the quarterly reports he'd been reviewing in the car. A promising startup in Austin had developed a new algorithm for renewable energy distribution, and Andre was considering a significant investment. After the vows and rings were exchanged, the newlyweds kissed to enthusiastic applause. The master of ceremonies announced that dinner would be served shortly, and the bar was now open for cocktails. Andre decided to stretch his legs. He excused himself from the table and walked toward one of the floor-to-ceiling windows, taking in the view of the city at night. From this height, he could see the gleaming tower of Wilson Enterprises headquarters in the distance. Beautiful view, isn't it? Andre turned to find a woman standing beside him, cocktail in hand. She wore a simple but elegant navy dress, her dark hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. It is, he agreed. I never get tired of this city at night. I'm Lena Chen, she said, offering her hand. Friend of the bride, Andre Wilson. Old roommate of the groom. Lena raised an eyebrow. Really? I'm surprised Blake had a black roommate. Veronica once told me his family has some traditional views. Andre appreciated her directness. College housing assignments can be educational that way. Lena laughed. Indeed. And what do you do, Andre Wilson, when you're not attending weddings of old roommates? Before he could answer, The master of ceremonies announced that dinner was being served. They walked back toward their respective tables. "Maybe we can continue this conversation later," Lena said with a smile. "I'd like that," Andre replied. Back at table 15, servers were delivering the first course, a lobster bisque that Andre knew was a specialty of the hotel's executive chef. The conversation around the table had turned to politics, with George and Bob or Bill lamenting government regulations on the financial industry. "It's these diversity quotas that are killing us," Bob or Bill said, gesturing with his soup spoon. "We're forced to hire people who aren't qualified just to check boxes." Patricia nodded in agreement. "It's the same at our country club. The board is being pressured to accept all sorts of new members." Andre ate his soup in silence, letting the conversation flow around him. He'd heard these arguments countless times before, usually from people who had no idea they were speaking to one of the most successful black businessmen in the country. The main course arrived, filet mignon for most guests, though Andre had requested the vegetarian option when he RSVP'd. As they ate, Blake made his way around the room, stopping at each table to chat with guests. When he reached table 15, he was already showing signs of having enjoyed the open bar. "Having a good time, everyone?" Blake asked, his words slightly slurred. He rested a hand on Andre's shoulder, leaning heavily. "Andre here was the smartest guy in our dorm, always studying while the rest of us were partying." "Isn't that right?" "I had scholarships to maintain," Andre said mildly. "Scholarships," Blake repeated with a laugh. "See, smart guy. Though I bet I'm doing better now, eh?" He winked conspiratorially. "Finance always beats tech in the long run," Andre simply smiled. "Congratulations again on your marriage, Blake." "Thanks, man. Good to have you here. Add some diversity to the crowd." Blake laughed again, a bit too loudly, then moved on to the next table. Patricia leaned toward Andre. "Don't mind Blake. He gets a bit much when he drinks. He's really very progressive. He has several minority employees at his firm." Andre nodded politely but said nothing. He finished his meal and excused himself to visit the bar. As he waited for the bartender, he felt a tap on his shoulder. "We meet again," Lena said, sliding in beside him. "How's your table?" "Educational," Andre replied dryly. "That bad?" Lena grinned. "Mine too. Veronica's college sorority sisters are exactly what you'd expect." They both ordered drinks. Whiskey for Andre, gin and tonic for Lena, and moved to a quieter corner of the room. "So you never told me what you do," Lena said. "I run a company that invests in technology and real estate," Andre replied. Deliberately vague. "Sounds interesting. I'm an architect. My firm designed the new public library downtown. The one with the glass dome. That's beautiful work." Their conversation flowed easily, a welcome respite from the awkwardness at his table. Andre learned that Lena had known Veronica since they were paired as roommates in their first architecture class, though they had grown apart over the years. "We have different priorities," Lena explained diplomatically, "but you never forget your first friends in a new city." As they talked, Andre noticed Blake watching them from across the room, his expression unreadable. A moment later, Blake was approaching with a group of his groomsmen, all looking slightly intoxicated. "Andre, there you are," Blake called, his voice carrying. "Stealing the prettiest guest I see." Andre kept his expression neutral. "Just getting acquainted with your guests." Of course. Blake turned to Lena. "Careful with this one, Lena. He was always the quiet, mysterious type." One of the groomsmen snickered. "The quiet ones are always trouble." Blake raised his glass. "Two old friends and new beginnings." They all drank, and Andre decided it was time to return to his table. The cake cutting would be soon, and after that he could make a polite exit. "It was nice meeting you, Lena," he said. "Enjoy the rest of the evening." As he walked away, he heard Blake's voice behind him. "Bit standoffish, isn't he?" "Always was. Never really fit in with the rest of us." Andre kept walking, his face impassive. The evening was turning out exactly as he'd expected, a reminder of why he rarely ventured into social circles where he wasn't known for his accomplishments, rather than his appearance. He returned to table 15 just as the wedding cake was being wheeled out. It was an elaborate 5-tier creation, undoubtedly costing thousands. As Blake and Veronica posed for photos with the cake, Andre checked his watch. Another hour perhaps, and he could leave without seeming rude. Little did he know that the evening was about to take an unexpected turn. The wedding cake was cut with much fanfare, Blake and Veronica feeding each other small bites while photographers captured the moment. Servers quickly took over, slicing the rest of the cake for the guests. Andre accepted a small piece when it was offered, though he had little appetite for the overly sweet frosting. The dance floor opened after the cake, with Blake and Veronica sharing their first dance to a ballad Andre didn't recognize. He watched from his table, nursing a glass of water. He'd switched from alcohol after his conversation with Lena, wanting to keep a clear head for the drive home. Patricia leaned toward him as the first dance ended. They make such a beautiful couple, don't they? Veronica comes from the Arlington family, banking, you know. Their children will have the perfect pedigree. Andre nodded politely, wondering not for the first time why he had bothered to come. This world of old money and social connections had never been his, even now that he could easily afford entry. The father-daughter dance followed, then Blake dancing with his mother. Finally, the DJ invited all guests to join them on the dance floor. Andre remained seated, checking his phone discreetly. It was almost 10 o'clock. He could reasonably leave after another 30 minutes or so. Not much of a dancer. Andre looked up to find Lena standing beside his table, smiling down at him. "I can dance," he said, returning her smile. "Just weighing whether it's worth the effort." "Oh, it's definitely worth the effort," she said, extending her hand. "One dance before you make your escape?" "I saw you checking the time." Andre hesitated, then stood. "One dance." He followed Lena to the dance floor where a mix of old and young couples were moving to a popular song from the early 2000s, something with a steady beat that was easy to dance to. Andre found himself relaxing slightly as they moved together, Lena following his lead with natural grace. "So," she said as they danced, "what's the real story with you and Blake?" "I'm sensing some history there." Andre considered how much to share. "Nothing dramatic. We were assigned as roommates freshman year. He came from money, I didn't. He made sure I knew the difference." Lena nodded. "That sounds like the Blake that Veronica has described to me. Old money, old attitudes. People don't change much," Andre agreed, "though sometimes circumstances do." "And have your circumstances changed since college?" Lena asked, her eyes curious. Andre smiled. "You could say that." The song ended before Lena could ask more questions, transitioning to a slower ballad. Without discussion, they adjusted their position, Lena's hand resting lightly on his shoulder, his at her waist. They moved together smoothly as if they'd danced before. "You know," Lena said after a moment, "I almost didn't come tonight. Veronica and I have grown apart over the years, but now I'm glad I did." "As am I," Andre replied, surprising himself with his sincerity. From the corner of his eye, Andre noticed Blake watching them from near the bar, his expression darkening as he downed another drink. Andre tensed slightly but continued dancing. He wasn't going to let Blake's apparent disapproval spoil the one genuinely pleasant interaction he'd had all evening. As the song ended, Andre was about to suggest they get some air on the terrace when a commotion broke out near the gift table. Blake's voice rose above the music, slurred but angry. "Where is it? Who took it?" The DJ lowered the volume as guests turned toward the disturbance. Blake was frantically patting his pockets, his face flushed with alcohol and anger. "My watch! My Patek Philippe is gone!" Veronica hurried to his side, trying to calm him. "Blake, darling, are you sure you were wearing it? Maybe you left it in the suite when you changed. I was wearing it during the ceremony. Someone took it." Blake's voice rose higher, his words slurring. "It's worth $50,000. The mood in the ballroom shifted instantly, guests murmuring among themselves. Some looked concerned, others uncomfortable. The hotel manager appeared, speaking quietly to Blake, who shook him off. "I want everyone searched," Blake demanded. "That watch was a gift from my father." Andre sighed. It was definitely time to leave. He turned to Lena. "I think that's my cue to head out. It was lovely meeting you." "Wait," she said, touching his arm. "Let me give you my number. Perhaps we could—" She was interrupted by Blake, who had spotted them and was now walking purposefully in their direction, flanked by two groomsmen and the hotel's security manager. "You!" Blake pointed at Andre, his finger wavering slightly. "You were by the gift table earlier." "I saw you." Andre stared at him, momentarily stunned by the accusation. "I wasn't anywhere near the gift table, Blake. Don't lie to me." Blake's face was red now, his eyes unfocused. "I saw you there after the cake cutting. And now my watch is missing." A hush fell over the nearby guests. Andre felt dozens of eyes on him, felt the immediate shift in how people were looking at him. The only black man in the immediate vicinity, now accused of theft. "Blake, you're drunk," Andre said quietly. "I've been at my table or on the dance floor the entire time. I was never near the gift table." "Check him," Blake demanded, turning to the security manager. "Check his pockets." The security manager, a middle-aged man with a receding hairline, looked deeply uncomfortable. "Sir, I can't just search a guest without—" "This is my wedding," Blake shouted. "And someone stole my watch. Who else would it be?" The implication hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Several gasps rose from the crowd. "What exactly are you suggesting, Blake?" Andre asked, his voice steady despite the anger building inside him. "I'm not suggesting anything," Blake sneered. "I'm stating facts. My watch is missing, and you're the most likely suspect. Based on what evidence?" Andre's voice remained calm, though his hands had curled into fists at his sides. "Based on the fact that you were near the gift table. And you're the only one here who—" Blake caught himself. "But just barely. The only one here who what?" Andre pressed. "Go ahead, Blake, finish that thought." Blake's father appeared at his son's side, looking mortified. "Blake, that's enough." "You're making a scene." "No, Dad, my watch is gone and I know he took it," Blake insisted, pointing again at Andre. "What's he even doing here? We weren't friends. He probably crashed the wedding." "I was invited," Andre said, though I'm now questioning why I accepted. Veronica was tugging at Blake's arm. "Please, darling, not on our wedding day. We can look for the watch tomorrow." "No," Blake shook her off. "I want him searched, now." The security manager looked from Blake to Andre, clearly torn. "This is absurd," Lena interjected. "Andre was dancing with me. He wasn't anywhere near the gift table." "Stay out of this, Lena," Blake snapped. "You don't know what you're talking about." Andre had had enough. He reached into his pocket for his phone, causing several people nearby to gasp, as if they expected him to pull out the missing watch. Instead, he pulled up a contact and pressed call. "Who are you calling?" Blake demanded. "You can't just—" "Mr. Wilson!" A new voice entered the fray as the hotel's general manager, Thomas Reynolds, pushed through the crowd. "Is there a problem, sir?" The security manager turned to Reynolds, confused. "You know this gentleman, Mr. Reynolds?" "Of course I do," Reynolds replied, looking anxious. "This is Andre Wilson, the majority owner of this hotel, and 3 others in our group." A stunned silence fell over the crowd. Blake's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "Owner?" he finally managed. "What are you talking about?" "Mr. Wilson's company acquired controlling interest in the Grand Summit Hotel Group 3 years ago," Reynolds explained, glancing nervously at Andre. "He's my boss, essentially." Andre put his phone away, his expression unreadable. "I was just calling Ray, my head of security. But it seems that won't be necessary." "There must be some mistake," Blake stammered, his face now pale. "Andre Washington was a scholarship kid from—" "It's Wilson now," Andre corrected him. "And yes, I was on scholarship. Things change, Blake. People succeed in ways you might not expect." Blake's father stepped forward, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and calculation. "Mr. Wilson, please accept our most sincere apologies for this misunderstanding. My son has had too much to drink and—" "This is no misunderstanding," Andre cut him off. "Your son accused me of theft based on nothing but the color of my skin. That's not alcohol talking. That's prejudice." Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Others began to whisper among themselves. "That's not true," Blake protested, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "It wasn't because it was because you were near the gift table." "I was never near the gift table," Andre repeated. "As Ms. Chen pointed out, I was dancing with her. Before that, I was at my table." "Your accusation has no basis, in fact." One of the groomsmen who had been hovering nearby suddenly bent down, picking something up from under a nearby table. Blake? Is this your watch?" He held up a gleaming timepiece. Blake stared at it, then snatched it from his friend's hand. "Where did you find that?" he demanded. "It was under the table. Must have slipped off your wrist when you were sitting there earlier." The silence in the room was deafening. All eyes moved from the watch to Blake, then to Andre. "Well," Andre said, his voice carrying in the quiet room, "it seems the mystery is solved." Blake looked at the watch in his hand, then at Andre, his face flushing with a different kind of embarrassment. I didn't—" "Oh, I think you did," Andre said quietly. You made yourself perfectly clear, he turned to Lena. It was a pleasure meeting you. Perhaps we'll cross paths again under better circumstances. Then to the room at large. Congratulations to the bride and groom. I'll be taking my leave now. As Andre turned to go, Blake rushed forward, grabbing his arm. Wait, Andre, I didn't mean... Andre looked pointedly at the hand on his arm until Blake removed it. 20 years ago, you made sure I knew I didn't belong in your world, Andre said, his voice low enough that only those nearby could hear. Today you just made sure I know nothing has changed. The only difference is, now I don't need your approval or acceptance. With that, Andre straightened his jacket and walked toward the exit, the crowd parting before him. As he reached the door, he heard Lena's voice calling after him, but he didn't look back. Some bridges once burned could never be rebuilt, and some lessons, it seemed, were destined to be learned the hard way. Andre's footsteps echoed in the marble hallway as he walked toward the elevator. The music from the ballroom had resumed, but muted now, as if the volume of the celebration had been permanently lowered. He pressed the button for the lobby, leaned against the wall and closed his eyes, letting out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The elevator doors were about to close when a hand shot between them. They reopened to reveal Lena, slightly breathless, her composed appearance from earlier now somewhat disheveled. You left without giving me a chance, she said, stepping into the elevator. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Andre straightened up, surprised by her appearance. I'm fine, just ready to go home. What Blake did was inexcusable, Lena said, her eyes flashing with anger. Everyone in that room knew exactly what he was implying. The elevator began its descent, the soft hum filling the silence between them. It's nothing I haven't experienced before, Andre said finally, though usually with less of an audience. That doesn't make it right. No, it doesn't. They reached the lobby and Andre stepped out, Lena following. The grand space was quiet at this hour, just a few hotel guests crossing to the front desk or lounges. Can I buy you a drink? Lena asked. The hotel bar is supposed to be excellent, though I guess you would know that, being the owner and all. A small smile crossed Andre's face. Co-owner. And yes, the bar is quite good. He considered her offer. He had planned to go straight home, to put this unfortunate evening behind him. But something about Lena's straightforward manner and the genuine concern in her eyes made him reconsider. One drink, he agreed, and then I really should call it a night. They found a quiet corner in the hotel's upscale bar, which was dimly lit and half empty. A jazz trio played softly on a small stage. Andre ordered a whiskey neat, Lena a glass of red wine. So, she said once they were settled, Andre Wilson, hotel magnate. Any other surprises I should know about? A few, he admitted, though hotel magnate is only a small part of it. Wilson Enterprises has interests in technology, real estate, clean energy, and education. Lena's eyes widened. Wait, Wilson Enterprises? The company that funded the new tech center downtown and the scholarship program at City University? Andre nodded. That's us. Wow. Lena took a sip of her wine. And Blake has no idea who you really are, does he? He didn't. Until tonight. That explains a lot about his reaction when the hotel manager recognized you. I've never seen someone turn that shade of green before. Lena smiled, but then grew serious. Why did you accept his invitation? He must have known it wouldn't be comfortable. Andre considered the question. It was something he'd been asking himself all evening. Curiosity, maybe, or perhaps a desire to close a chapter from my past. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. When you grow up with limited means like I did, you carry certain memories with you. Blake represented a world that was closed to me back then. I wanted to see if it still mattered. And does it? No, Andre said firmly. It doesn't. What matters is what I've built, the people whose lives I've been able to improve through my company and foundation. He took a sip of his whiskey. Blake's world is small. Mine isn't. Well said. Lena raised her glass in a small toast. They fell into easy conversation. Lena told him more about her architecture firm and their focus on sustainable design. Andre shared stories about the early days of his first tech startup, the risks he'd taken, and the unexpected success that had followed. I changed my last name when I started the company, Andre explained, not to hide my identity but to honor my grandmother. She raised me after my parents died, worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. She always believed I would do something important with my life. She was right, Lena said softly. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion at the bar entrance. Blake stumbled in, his tie loosened and his hair disheveled. His eyes scanned the room until they found Andre and Lena in the corner. "There you are," he called, his words still slurred. "I've been looking all over for you." Andre tensed as Blake approached their table. "Blake, I think we've said all we need to say to each other." No, you don't understand." Blake pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. "I came to apologize. Properly apologize." Andre remained silent, his expression neutral. "I was wrong," Blake continued. "So wrong. I never should have accused you. It was the alcohol talking, you know. I would never. I mean, I'm not racist," Lena supplied, her tone icy. Blake flinched. "That's not what I am. I have black friends. I have a black guy on my management team." Andre raised an eyebrow. "One whole black guy? Impressive." "That came out wrong," Blake said quickly. "What I'm trying to say is I respect you, Andre. I always have. And now that I know what you've accomplished—" "That's the problem, Blake," Andre interrupted. "You're only here apologizing because you found out I have money and power. If I were just a regular guy who happened to be black, you'd still think I stole your watch." Blake's face flushed. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Andre leaned forward. "Tell me honestly, if I had been a white guest at your wedding, would your first instinct have been to accuse me of theft?" Blake opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked down at the table. "That's what I thought," Andre said. "Your apology isn't about being sorry for what you did. It's about being sorry for who you did it to." "You don't understand," Blake said, his voice dropping. "My father is furious. Veronica is humiliated. Do you know who was at that wedding? Half the city's financial elite. This could ruin me. And there it is," Lena murmured. Andre studied Blake for a long moment. "What exactly are you afraid of, Blake? That I'll use my influence against you? That I'll tell everyone what happened? Would you blame me for worrying?" Blake asked. "You own half the commercial real estate in the financial district. Your company is a major player in tech investment. You could destroy Thompson Investment Group with a few phone calls." Andre was struck by the fear in Blake's eyes. Not fear of having done something wrong, but fear of consequences. It was a revealing moment. "I'm not interested in revenge, Blake," Andre said finally. "That's not how I operate. Your actions tonight speak for themselves. I don't need to add to that." Blake sagged with visible relief. "Thank you. I knew you were a reasonable guy. But," Andre continued, "I do think some good should come from this unfortunate situation." Blake tensed again. "What do you mean? Thompson Investment Group has, 50 employees? And based on what you've told me, very little diversity." "Well, yes, but finance is traditionally—" "Save it," Andre cut him off. "Here's what's going to happen. On Monday, you're going to hire a diversity and inclusion consultant to evaluate your hiring practices and company culture. You're going to implement their recommendations, and you're going to donate 5% of your annual profits to scholarship funds for underprivileged students." Blake stared at him. 5%? "That's less than you spend on client entertainment each year," Andre finished for him. "I've seen your company financials, Blake. I make it my business to know about potential investment opportunities. Or in your case, what to avoid." The color drained from Blake's face. "You've been researching my company?" "I research many companies," Andre said with a shrug. "Yours came across my desk last year when you were seeking additional capital. I passed on the opportunity. Now I know my instincts were correct," Blake swallowed hard. "And if I agree to your terms? Then we never need to speak of this again. You go your way, I go mine." Andre took another sip of his whiskey. "It's more than fair considering the alternatives." Blake nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll do it. All of it." "Good." Andre set down his glass. "Now, if you don't mind, Ms. Chen and I were having a private conversation." Blake stood up, straightening his rumpled jacket. "Right, of course. I'll go back to my wedding. Congratulations again," Andre said, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. After Blake left, Lena let out a low whistle. "That was impressive, and surprisingly merciful." "Punishment isn't always the best teacher," Andre replied. "Sometimes opportunity is more effective. Those scholarships will help kids who need it, and maybe, just maybe, Blake will learn something from the process." "You really believe people can change?" Andre considered this. "I believe they can if they want to, but they have to want it. I'm just providing motivation." Lena smiled at him over her wine glass. You're not what I expected when I saw you standing alone by that window earlier tonight. Is that a good thing? A very good thing. She set down her glass. So, Andre Wilson, now that we've survived a wedding, an accusation, and a groveling apology, what comes next? Andre felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. A spark of genuine interest in someone new. Someone who had seen him at a difficult moment and still wanted to know more. Dinner, perhaps? He suggested. Somewhere that isn't this hotel. I know a great little place by the river. I'd like that, Lena said, her eyes warm in the dim light. Outside the bar, in the grand lobby of the hotel he partially owned, Andre felt a weight lift from his shoulders. What had started as an uncomfortable evening revisiting the past had somehow opened a door to something new. And for that at least he could be grateful to Blake Thompson and his disastrous wedding. As they walked toward the hotel entrance, Andre realized that sometimes the most important journeys weren't about going back to face the past, but about finding unexpected paths forward, and sometimes those paths appeared in the most unlikely places, even at the wedding of someone who had never truly seen you for who you were. 3 months had passed since Blake Thompson's wedding. The summer heat had given way to crisp autumn air, and the city was transformed by the changing colors of the trees in the parks Andre had helped renovate. He stood at the window of his office, looking out at the skyline as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows between the buildings. The quarterly reports are ready for your review, Tanya said, setting a tablet on his desk. And the Wilson Foundation board meeting is confirmed for Thursday at 2 p.m. Thank you, Andre replied, turning from the window. Any word from Dr. Liu about the scholarship expansion? She sent over the proposal this morning. I've added it to your reading queue. Tanya hesitated, then added, There's also an email from Thompson Investment Group. Blake Thompson is requesting a meeting. Andre raised an eyebrow. Is he? What about? He says it's regarding the diversity initiative you discussed. His exact words were, I'd like to share our progress and discuss potential collaboration opportunities. Andre sat down at his desk, thoughtful. After the wedding incident, he had expected Blake to do the minimum required to fulfill their agreement. Nothing more. Her request for a meeting was unexpected. Schedule it for next week, he decided, but only 30 minutes. Will do. Tanya headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and don't forget dinner tonight. Lena texted to confirm 7 p.m. at River Bistro. Andre smiled. I haven't forgotten. After Tanya left, Andre picked up the tablet and began reviewing the quarterly reports, but his mind kept drifting back to Blake's request. What kind of collaboration opportunities could he possibly be suggesting? Andre's instinct was skepticism, but he reminded himself that he had been the one to push Blake toward making changes. If those changes were genuine, perhaps they deserved acknowledgement. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Thompson Investment Group announces new diversity scholarship program for finance students. Curious, Andre opened the article. Blake's company had partnered with 3 local universities to provide full scholarships to minority students pursuing degrees in finance and economics, with guaranteed internships at the firm upon graduation. It was more than Andre had expected. Much more. The article included a quote from Blake. Our industry has historically lacked diversity, which has limited our perspective and our potential. This initiative is just the beginning of our commitment to changing that reality. Andre set down his phone, unsure what to make of this. Was it a genuine change of heart or just good PR? Either way, the scholarships would help deserving students, which was what mattered most. Later that evening, Andre met Lena at River Bistro, their favorite restaurant overlooking the waterfront. The past 3 months had seen them grow closer, their relationship deepening from cautious interest to something much more significant. Tonight, Lena was already seated at their usual table when he arrived, wearing a deep green dress that complemented her dark hair. Sorry I'm late, Andre said, kissing her cheek before sitting down. Board call ran over. Only 10 minutes late, Lena said with a smile. That's practically early for you. They ordered drinks, sparkling water for Andre, who was driving, and a glass of Cabernet for Lena. I saw the news about Thompson Investment Group's scholarship program, Lena said once the waiter had gone. Seems your motivation worked better than expected. Andre nodded. Blake's requested a meeting next week. Says he wants to discuss collaboration opportunities. Are you going to do it? I'll hear him out. Andre unfolded his napkin. People deserve a chance to show they've changed. Lena studied him for a moment. You're a better person than most, you know that? After what he did at the wedding, many people would still be holding a grudge. Andre shrugged. Grudges take energy. I'd rather put that energy toward something constructive. Their conversation shifted to Lena's latest project, a community center in a historically underserved neighborhood, funded in part by a grant from the Wilson Foundation. Her eyes lit up as she described the sustainable design features and the input from local residents. We're presenting the final plans to the community board next week, she said. Would you want to come? They'd love to meet the man behind the funding. I'd be honored, Andre replied. Just send me the details. Their dinner continued pleasantly, the conversation flowing easily between work and more personal topics. It still amazed Andre sometimes how quickly Lena had become an important part of his life. Unlike previous relationships where his success had often created an imbalance, with Lena there was a natural equality. She was accomplished in her own right, secure in her identity and unimpressed by his wealth or status. After dinner, they walked along the riverfront, the city lights reflecting in the dark water. Andre found himself thinking about how much had changed in just 3 months, all because he'd accepted an invitation he'd nearly thrown away. Penny for your thoughts? Lena asked, squeezing his hand. I was just thinking about choices, Andre replied. How the smallest decisions can lead to unexpected places. Like going to the wedding of someone you barely knew from college. Exactly like that, he smiled down at her. Best decision I've made in years. The following Monday, Andre arrived at his office to find his schedule already busy with meetings and calls. Blake Thompson was scheduled for 2 p.m., slotted in between a technology investment review and a call with his legal team about a new acquisition. The morning passed quickly, and before he knew it, Tanya was announcing Blake's arrival. Andre stood as Blake entered the office, noting that he looked different somehow, less smug, more serious. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Blake said, shaking Andre's hand firmly. I appreciate your time. Have a seat. Andre gestured to the chair across from his desk. I read about your scholarship program. Impressive initiative. Blake sat down, looking slightly uncomfortable. That's partly why I wanted to meet with you. The scholarship program was just the beginning. Oh? Andre kept his expression neutral. After the wedding, after what happened, I did a lot of thinking, Blake said, his eyes meeting Andre's directly. At first I was just worried about damage control, but then I started reading the materials from the diversity consultant you made me hire. He gave a small self-deprecating laugh. Made me hire? Listen to me. You didn't make me do anything. You gave me a chance to be better than I was. Andre leaned back in his chair, genuinely surprised by Blake's candor. Go on. The consultant had me do these exercises, these perspective-taking tasks, put myself in other people's shoes. And honestly, it was uncomfortable as hell. Blake ran a hand through his hair, but it made me see things I'd never noticed before. Like how my dad's company, my company now, has been run by people who all look the same, think the same, for generations. That's true of many financial institutions, Andre said. It's a systemic issue, but it doesn't have to be, Blake insisted. That's what I realized. We've hired 4 new executives in the past 2 months, all from different backgrounds. Our investment committee now includes women and people of color. And you know what? Our decision-making has improved. We're seeing opportunities we would have missed before. Andre studied Blake's face, looking for signs of insincerity, but finding none. That's significant progress in a short time. It's just the start, Blake said. Which brings me to why I'm here. The Thompson Foundation has always focused on traditional charities. Art museums, symphony orchestras, the usual tax write-offs. I want to redirect our focus to educational access and economic opportunity in underserved communities, and I want to partner with the Wilson Foundation to do it right. Andre didn't bother hiding his surprise. That's not what I expected from this meeting. I know. Blake smiled slightly. The Blake Thompson you knew wouldn't have suggested it. But I'm trying not to be that guy anymore. What changed, Blake? Really? Andre asked. Because this goes beyond what we agreed to after the wedding. Blake was quiet for a moment. Honestly, it was watching you walk away that night. You had every right to be angry, to want revenge. Instead, you turned it into an opportunity for positive change. It made me realize how small my thinking had been, how limited my world was. He paused, then continued. And Veronica left me. 2 weeks after the honeymoon, said she couldn't be with someone who would do what I did, who would think what I thought. That was a wake-up call, too. I'm sorry about your marriage, Andre said, and meant it. Don't be. She was right to leave. Blake straightened in his chair. So what do you say? Would the Wilson Foundation consider a joint initiative with us? I have some ideas I'd like to propose. Andre considered the man sitting across from him. Was this genuine change or just an elaborate performance? But then he thought about the scholarship program, the new hires, the concrete actions Blake had already taken. Those weren't fake. They were making a real difference in people's lives. I'll need to see a detailed proposal and discuss it with my board, Andre said finally. But in principle, yes, I'm open to collaboration. If the focus truly is on expanding opportunity and access. It is, Blake assured him. I've got a presentation ready whenever you and your team can review it. They spent the next 20 minutes discussing the broad outlines of Blake's proposal. Andre was impressed despite himself. Blake had clearly done his homework, identifying gaps in current educational funding and proposing targeted solutions. As their meeting wound down, Blake hesitated, then said, There's one more thing. A personal thing. What's that? Andre asked. I wanted to apologize again. For everything. Not because of who you turned out to be, but because of who I was that night, and for all the times before that back in college when I made you feel less than. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air between them, simple and unadorned. Andre saw the sincerity in Blake's eyes, the humility in his posture. Thank you, Andre said quietly. Apology accepted. They shook hands as Blake prepared to leave. At the door, Blake turned back. By the way, I heard you've been seeing Lena Chen. Smart choice. She always was the best of Veronica's friends. After Blake left, Andre sat at his desk, reflecting on the unexpected turn of events. People could change, it seemed, if given the right motivation and opportunity. It didn't erase the past, but it could certainly reshape the future. That evening, as he shared the details of the meeting with Lena over a home-cooked meal in his apartment, she listened with thoughtful attention. So do you believe him? She asked when he finished. That he's really changed? Andre considered the question carefully. I believe he's trying, and that's a start. Lena nodded, reaching across the table to take his hand. You know what I think? That wedding was always going to be a turning point. Just not in the way anyone expected. Andre smiled, squeezing her hand gently. Life rarely turns out the way we expect. Sometimes it turns out better. Outside the window of his penthouse, the city lights twinkled in the darkness, each one representing countless stories unfolding, lives intersecting, changing course, finding new directions. Andre Wilson's story had taken an unexpected turn that night at the Grand Summit Hotel. But as he looked across the table at Lena, he couldn't help feeling grateful for the path it had set him on. In the end, what had begun as an uncomfortable collision of past and present had become something else entirely. A bridge to a more hopeful future, not just for him, but perhaps for many others as well.